This video is going to show you how we do our cast on and the first round to put stitch markers in on this center out rectangular lace shawl. So the full shawl pattern is begin the beginning, and I'll put a link to the pattern in the show notes here. This is just to kind of walk you through and give you some extra information as you're working. So the construction of this shawl is a little bit different than a standard rectangular shawl. You're actually casting on in the center right here. And every round that you do is putting stitches all the way around all four sides of the rectangles. And you will notice the diagonal, almost they look like seams coming out from the four corners. Those are where we're going to be doing our increases, and that's what gives us our rectangular shape. And so we'll be putting stitch markers in each of those four spots to be referencing as we're working through the pattern. So I am just going to show you how to do our cast on in the center, and then how to work the first round and get those stitch markers in. This is just a little mini version. The pattern is for a full-sized version of the shawl. And we are going to begin with the cast on method called Judy's Magic Cast On, and this is going to put stitches on both sides of our needles, which is what we need to do this technique. So the first thing you're going to do is tie a slip knot. This does use some yarn from the tail, so you want to make sure that you have a long enough tail to be able to do that. I am going to put that slip knot onto one of the needles and then just pull to tighten that down. That needle is going to be my top needle. I'm going to put the second needle underneath it, and I do highly recommend using a circular needle with a very long cord. I used a 47-inch cord just because you end up with lots of stitches on your needle once you get towards the outside of this shawl, and so I found that that one was the most useful. And we want to put the short tail of the yarn, the end that's not connected to our ball, goes over our pointer finger, and the end that is connected to our ball goes over our thumb. So we've got everything set up correctly to do Judy's Magic Cast On, and to do this, we are going to take our needles and we're going to rock up to the top. We're going to put the strand of yarn that comes from the top finger over our bottom needle, and then we're going to rock our needles down, and we're going to put the loop that's on the bottom finger on the top needle. So rock up, around, rock down, around, rock up, around, rock down, around. I would highly recommend that you take the hand that has the yarn on it and you hold that hand pretty much still. Once you start wiggling that hand around, it gets very challenging to figure out where to keep things and where to move your needle. So keep the hand with the yarn on it still, and use your right hand, the one that is holding your needles, should be the one that's doing the majority of the moving. And for my sample piece that I'm going to be showing you here today, I want 15 stitches on each needle. And so you are just going to count these stitches just like you would count anything else. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So I don't have enough stitches on there. And the last thing that I completed was to rock up and put the loop around my bottom needle. So now I'm going to rock down. That's going to put a 12th stitch, 13, 14, 15. Theoretically, I've got 15 stitches now here. I am going to count those. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, and I would recommend to count them on the bottom too. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Okay, so I have the correct number for the sample piece. The pattern is going to have you cast on many more stitches than this to do the full size piece. So this is just to show you how this works. Before we do anything else now, I'm going to take the 2 strands of yarn that I have, and I'm going to rotate them around each other. So I just wrapped them around each other. And now I am going to rotate my needles. So I'm still looking at the front side, but I'm just rotating those needles so the points come out to the other way. And that is my cast on. Now to work our first round, and the round 1 instructions on the pattern are both charted out and written out in words because this first row is a little bit more complicated. So we are going to be starting by knitting across the stitches on the top needle. The stitches on the bottom needle we don't need access to right now, so I'm actually going to take that bottom needle and pull it through so those stitches go down onto the cord. Don't get super excited and push those stitches off into the air. We want them on the cord. And now the chart and the pattern are both saying to knit one stitch. So you put your needle in just like you would do for any other knit stitch that you are working on. And you want to make sure that you are not working with your tail. You are working with your working yarn. And we are just going to knit that one stitch. So knit one. And now the pattern is telling us to place a marker. I choose to place my marker, this is the beginning round marker, so this tells us when we are at the beginning of a round, we've gone all the way around. I choose to make this one a different color. So the rest of my markers for the other three corners are all going to be the same, and the beginning round marker is going to be a different color. I just find that for me, that helps me keep things straight a little bit more. And now the pattern is telling us to do a yarn over, so we simply wrap the yarn over a needle just like that, and then we are going to knit to one stitch from the end of our needle. The pattern is giving you a number of stitches here, but that is a much larger number than I have on my sample because the pattern is for the full-size version, and it is very boring to watch somebody cast on 162 stitches and knit across them all. 15 is much more interesting and gets the point conveyed a lot easier. So we are simply knitting across, and I'm just ignoring the stitches that are on the cord underneath that. I put my needle in, I'm going to move this loop out of the way. So the knit stitches are identical to every other knit stitch you've ever done. I'm going to put my needle in just like a knit stitch, yarn around just like a knit stitch, pull that through, and push the loop off. So I am just doing a knit stitch. So I knit the number that the pattern is telling me to knit, and then I am going to do a yarn over, wrap the yarn over my needle. I am going to knit one, and now I'm going to place a marker, and this marks my second corner. And so again, this was the markers right here for the first corner. I've knit all the way across the center section. I'm doing a yarn over and placing a marker for my second corner, and then I'm going to do a yarn over again on the other side. And the yarn over, knit one, yarn over is what creates that center. It almost looks like a seam or a little, I think it looks like a vertebrae up the side there. So I did a yarn over, I knit one, I placed my marker, I did a yarn over. And now the pattern is telling you to make one. This make one is going to create, again on my sample one, the make one is going to create this part, the short edge of our rectangle right here. So the make one, we are creating this stitch right here. And to do a make one, there's going to be a little bit of pulling and tugging on the needle cord. So before I do my make one, I actually want all of the stitches that were on the cord down here, I want these all back up on my second needle. And things do feel a little bit awkward. Things are a little wiggly on our needles. Things don't feel super secure just because we don't have a lot of fabric created there. So there's going to be some more manipulation to get this to happen now than there would normally be. Once we have things mostly up on that needle, we are going to pull the needle that we have been working, and do make sure that you've still got that yarn over there. We finished working by doing a yarn over. I'm going to pull this needle out so that those stitches go down onto the cord. And then to make one, just as in any other make one, I'm going to insert my right hand needle under, I always say under 2 strands. I think if you go under just 1 strand, you end up with a hole that's larger than you want. So I'm going to insert my right hand needle under 2 strands. I'm going to grab that yarn and pull it up through here. So I did a yarn over, a knit one, I placed my marker for my second corner. I did a yarn over, I did a make one. So that's the narrow side of my rectangle. And now our pattern and our chart are both saying that I am going to do a yarn over, knit one place marker for my third corner. So a yarn over, oops, it's a little tight on there, a yarn over, a knit one, and then I'm going to place marker. That is my third corner. So again, I knit my first stitch and place my marker for my first corner. I knit across here. I yarn over, knit one, yarn over for my second corner. I did a make one. That is the first stitch that will become the short edge of the rectangle. And now I'm doing this third corner, the yarn over, knit one, yarn over. So I did my yarn over, my knit one, my place, my marker. My pattern is telling me to yarn over and to knit to one from the last stitch on this needle. You'll notice as I'm going, these stitches look backwards. They are left leg in front instead of right leg in front, like a standard stitch. This is a normal thing that happens when you do Judy's Magic Cast On, and so I prefer to go ahead and take that stitch and turn it the correct direction on my needle, and so that I'm knitting it like a standard stitch. If you prefer not to manipulate your stitches that way, it's not going to make a huge big difference. It's going to be a pretty subtle change that happens on there, and your pattern and your piece will still function exactly like normal if you choose to skip this step. So I am just taking my stitch, turning it from left leg in front to the more standard right leg in front. And again, it does not mean you did your cast on incorrectly. That is just what that cast on does. And I apologize for the beeping in the background. They're doing some heavy duty construction work at the end of our driveway. So we are going to just simply knit all the way across here until we are one stitch from the end of the needle. And now we are going to, and I'm going to go ahead and put this last stitch the standard way. And so I am now going to do, as the pattern and the chart say, a yarn over, a knit one, and I am going to place my last marker, whoops, and do another yarn over. So that is my fourth corner. I'm now going to make one, as the pattern is telling me, to create that second short side of my rectangle. And so just like last time, I'm going to pull my cord and I'm going to take these stitches and get them down onto the other needle. And this is by far the hardest row to do this, to manipulate those stitches to get them down onto the needle tip. After you do another row or two, this gets much, much easier. So I've got that started. I do want to make sure that I'm keeping that yarn over that I put there. And I'm going to pull the needle that I have been working with, pull that through so that those stitches go down onto the cord. And I'm going to do my make one, just like I did last time. I am going to not go under just one strand because I think that makes a bigger hole. I'm going to put my needle under two strands. I'm going to grab that yarn and pull it through. And that is the beginning of the short edge of our rectangle. And now my pattern is telling me to do one final yarn over. And that is the second yarn over for this first corner. So when we began this round, we did a knit one and a yarn over on this side. All of those seams have a yarn over on both sides. So at the beginning of every round where you're doing increases, you are always going to begin with a knit one and a yarn over. You're going to go all the way around following the pattern, and then you're going to do the second yarn over on the other side of that knit one. Is always going to be at the end of the round. do make sure you are following the pattern in the chart and you are remembering to do that yarn over at the very end of your round. And so we've done that yarn over at the very end of our round, and we are ready to begin round 2 of our chart. Round 2 of our chart begins with a knit 1 and then a yarn over, and then we are going to be starting the lace portion of this. And there will be another video on how to work lace from a chart.